The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room was full of whispers and excitement. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi walked up to the microphone. Lots of cameras took pictures of her as she walked. She looked very confident. Her blue jacket stood out against the old wooden walls. Across the room, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat quietly. She looked calm, like she always does in court. "Thank you for letting me talk today," Bondi said. Her voice was strong and clear. "I have something to show you that will change everything we know about how Justice Barrett got her job." The room got super quiet. Bondi opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. The folder was sealed and had the word "Confidential" written in big red letters. "What I'm about to show you tells about a secret deal that happened before Justice Barrett was confirmed. She never told this committee or the American people," Bondi said. Justice Barrett's face changed just a little. Her eyes got a bit bigger. Bondi opened the folder. Everyone on the committee leaned forward in their chairs. Their faces showed they were shocked. The chairman grabbed his gavel, trying to stop things, but it was too late. Bondi had already started talking, and what was coming next was big. So big it could change the Supreme Court forever. But before we talk more about this huge moment, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting political news that regular news might not show you. Pam Bondi didn't think she'd be part of something this big. She used to be Florida's Attorney General. That means she was the top lawyer for the state. She was tough and followed strong conservative rules. She worked as Florida's first female Attorney General from 2011 to 2019. Later, she went back to working as a regular lawyer, but she still knew many important people. Bondi was known for always being honest and wanting the government to be clear with the people. 3 weeks ago, she got a mysterious envelope. There was no name on it, but inside were papers that talked about something no one had known before about how Justice Barrett got her Supreme Court job. Justice Amy Coney Barrett was the youngest person on the Supreme Court. She worked very hard and was very smart. Before joining the Supreme Court, she taught law at Notre Dame and was a judge on a high court. She became a justice in October 2020 after Justice Eleanor Hartwell died. Barrett had a strong view of the law. Some people really liked her because of that, and others didn't. This hearing wasn't supposed to be anything big. It was just a normal check-in where the court talks to Congress. Barrett came on her own to help keep things good between the court and Congress. Nobody thought anything surprising would happen. But Bondi had spent many days checking if the papers she got were real. She talked to legal experts and people who knew about government rules. She told her friends, "This isn't about politics. If these papers are real, the American people need to know, especially before any big decisions are made by the court." This moment was very serious. If what Bondi said was true, it could mean Justice Barrett might have to step away from big cases or maybe even be removed from her job. But if Bondi was wrong, she could be in big trouble for saying bad things about justice without proof. The people in the room felt that seriousness. Democratic senators whispered to their helpers. Republican senators looked serious too. No one knew whether to defend Barrett or not. Barrett sat still, but people close to her noticed she was gripping the table hard with one hand. People all across the country were watching the hearing live on TV. This wasn't just some silly drama. It could change the way the Supreme Court works. Bondi spoke again. "The papers I have," she said, "show that before Justice Barrett's confirmation hearings, there was a private deal about how she would decide certain kinds of cases." Senator Samuel Bradford spoke up. "Miss Bondi, these are very serious things to say. Can you tell us exactly what this deal was?" Bondi nodded and showed the first paper. "This is an email from 2 important people in the last president's team. It's from September 18, 2020, 3 days before Barrett was officially nominated," she said. She put the email on the big screen so everyone could read it. The email didn't say everything clearly, but it talked about an understanding with ACB, which means Amy Coney Barrett, about how she would handle some court cases. Justice Barrett leaned toward her microphone. "These emails don't include me," she said. "I didn't get them, and I never had these talks." Bondi agreed. "That's true. You're not on the email. But the next paper is about that," she said. She showed the second page. It was a calendar that showed a meeting between Barrett and the same people from the email. The meeting happened the day after the email was sent. The chairman said, "Miss Bondi, just saying there was a meeting doesn't prove anything. It's normal for Supreme Court nominees to meet with government people." Bondi nodded. "I understand, Mr. Chairman. That's why the third document is the most important." She looked straight at Justice Barrett and said, "This is a note from someone who was at that meeting. It was sent to 3 other people." When this note came up on the screen, people in the room gasped. The note talked about legal questions that the court might have to deal with soon. It said what ACB thought about each one. But even more surprising, it said there were mutual promises about how she would vote on certain big topics. Senator David Green looked very concerned. He turned to Barrett and said, "Justice Barrett, did this meeting happen like the note says?" Barrett answered slowly but firmly, "Senator, I had lots of meetings during that time. I don't remember every detail. But I can say clearly, I never promised how I would decide on any future case. That would be against the rules." Bondi spoke again. "Justice Barrett, please look at page 53. It says you were worried people might think this meeting was wrong if it ever became public." The room got even quieter as Barrett looked at the page. The note said Barrett asked for complete secrecy about part of the conversation because it went beyond what normally happens in nomination talks. Senator Mark Ellis tried to stop the hearing from going further. "These papers aren't proven real. They're from secret sources. Why are we even talking about this here?" he said. But Bondi was ready. "Senator Ellis, I understand," she said. "That's why I had 2 expert investigators check the papers carefully." She showed the committee papers from digital experts who had checked the details of the electronic documents to make sure they were real. Then, Bondi introduced another piece of paper. "I have a statement from someone who was at this meeting," she said. "This person just came forward now because of recent decisions made by the Supreme Court that match what is written in these papers." The room became tense as Bondi named the person, a former Justice Department worker who had taken notes during the meeting. This person had just realized how serious what happened in the meeting was. Justice Barrett, who looked calm on the outside, asked for a short break to look over the papers with her team. The chairman saw that Barrett looked upset, even though she was trying to stay professional, so he quickly agreed to the break. When Barrett and her legal team left the room, everyone else started talking in small groups. Democrats were having serious discussions, while Republicans seemed divided. Some were preparing to defend Barrett, and others were trying to stay away from the mess. Experts in the law were quickly talking online about what this could mean for the country. When Barrett came back after 15 minutes, something was different. She seemed tense, and her usual confidence was gone. As she sat down, her legal team gave her a note. When the hearing started again, Justice Barrett asked to speak to the committee before anyone else asked questions. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee," Barrett said in a calm voice, "I've looked over the documents Miss Bondi gave us. These are serious claims, and they are about something very important, the independence of the court and the promise I made to be fair and honest. I've looked at the paper Miss Bondi showed us, and there are some things I don't remember or recognize, but instead of just saying no, I think we need to look into this further." The room became silent. Everyone had expected Barrett to say no right away, but instead, she asked for an investigation. Bondi saw her chance and said, "Justice Barrett, I appreciate that you're willing to look at these documents, but I have one more thing to show you." She pulled out one more paper. This is a handwritten note that the person who was there says you wrote during the meeting. It will help explain everything." Bondi showed the note on a projector, and everyone saw Barrett's handwriting on the screen. It had short notes about legal ideas, with stars next to certain things, and one note that said, "Maintain SONF." Barrett looked at the paper, and her face changed as she recognized the handwriting. The room was quiet as everyone waited for her to speak. Then, Barrett spoke. "This handwriting does look like mine," she said slowly. "But this note was shown to you without any background. Can I please look at the original paper?" The chairman agreed, and Barrett got up to walk over to Bondi's table. She looked closely at the paper under the light, then called her legal team over. They whispered to each other for a moment, and when Barrett went back to her seat, she seemed more sure of herself. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Miss Bondi," she said in a strong voice. "I do recognize this note, but it's not what you think. This note is part of my personal notes from when I was getting ready for my confirmation hearing. I kept detailed notes like any nominee would. The words Miss Bondi pointed out are not about secret promises, but about private client information for my job as a lawyer. I couldn't talk about it during the hearing because of the rules for lawyers. The SONF part is about confidentiality, not confirmation, as Miss Bondi suggested." Barrett showed the committee her own notes to prove it. "You can see the same symbols and short words in my notes. The SONF is always about confidentiality." Then Barrett turned to the documents Miss Bondi showed them. "As for the paper you gave us about the meeting, I can't explain where it came from, but I can say that it doesn't show what happened in the meeting. I would never make promises like the ones you're saying. I've always taken my oath to be fair very seriously." The mood in the room changed. Bondi, who had seemed in control before, now looked like she was losing the argument. "Justice Barrett, that sounds convenient," Bondi said, trying to fight back. "What about the notes from the whistleblower?" Barrett spoke firmly, interrupting her. "Miss Bondi, you talked about a whistleblower who wrote notes during the meeting. Can you show us the original notes from this person?" Bondi hesitated. "The whistleblower wrote down their memories, and that became the paper you showed us," she said. Barrett shook her head. "So you don't have any original notes from that person, just a paper they wrote later, based on memories from 2 years ago?" "Well, yes," Bondi said, "but the paper was written by officials from the administration right after the meeting." Barrett raised an eyebrow. "Then why does the paper show it was made last month? Your own experts said it was created recently, not 2 years ago." The room filled with whispers as Bondi looked shocked. She hadn't expected Barrett to know so much about the technical details. Senator Mark Ellis jumped in. "Miss Bondi, are you saying that a paper made last month can really show what happened in a meeting 2 years ago, with no notes or recordings from that time?" Before Bondi could answer, Barrett spoke again. "Mr. Chairman, during the break, my team checked the dates of the meeting. I wasn't even in Washington on that day. I was giving a lecture at Notre Dame Law School, and there are records and videos of it." Barrett showed the committee the travel records and the lecture schedule. "Also, the 2 people who you said I met with weren't even in Washington that day. One was in Florida and one was in Texas, and we know that from their public schedules." The room went completely quiet as everyone realized that the documents had a big mistake in them. The meeting couldn't have happened on that date because Barrett and the 2 other people weren't even there. Bondi stood frozen, not knowing how to respond. Barrett's calm, fact-based explanation had shown the documents were wrong. "I know that the work of the Supreme Court is controversial," Barrett said, her voice not angry but serious. "People may disagree with our decisions, but if there are serious claims of secret deals or unethical behavior, we need very strong proof. Proof that is based on facts, not guesses." The chairman saw the change in the room and spoke up. "Miss Bondi, do you have anything to say about the date mistake and how it's impossible that the meeting happened?" Bondi, now looking much less confident, said, I got these papers in good faith, and I had them checked for authenticity. If there are mistakes with the dates, they should be looked at more closely. I still think it's important to investigate judicial independence, but I see now that Justice Barrett has raised some good questions about this evidence. It was as close to an apology as she was going to give. Barrett had won, not by arguing angrily, but by carefully proving her point with facts. The hearing ended an hour later, but the story was far from over. As Barrett walked out of the committee room, surrounded by Capitol Police for extra security, the hallways were full of people. Congressional workers and journalists were talking and trying to figure out what they had just seen. Within minutes, news about Barrett's documents and Bondi's claims started trending on social media. News stations interrupted their regular shows to talk about what had happened, with legal experts explaining what the allegations meant and how Barrett responded. Conservative news outlets quickly said that the incident was an attack on Barrett's character, calling it an unfair attempt to hurt a respected judge. One right-leaning website had a headline that said, "Documents debunked, Justice Barrett exposes false allegations," along with video of Barrett showing that Bondi's claims were false. On the other hand, some progressive news outlets took a more balanced view. They said, Barrett denies controversial documents, but questions still remain about the independence of the court, which showed they agreed the evidence was wrong but were still concerned about the Supreme Court's decisions. The whistleblower who gave Bondi the documents stayed anonymous, but people started guessing who it might be. Some thought it was a former employee angry at Barrett, while others believed it could have been a setup to make it seem like there was a problem with the court's independence. By the evening, three big things happened. First, the chairman and top member of the Senate Judiciary Committee released a rare statement, saying they would investigate where the documents came from. They said, "We may not agree on the court's decisions, but we all agree that using fake documents in Congress is wrong." Second, the FBI started looking at the documents to figure out when and how they were made, and whether they were real or if someone had changed them recently. Third, a group of legal ethics experts published a statement saying that no matter if the allegations were true or not, the situation showed a bigger problem. They said there weren't enough rules for how Supreme Court justices should behave, and it was a problem that needed fixing. Justice Barrett stayed calm during the whole situation. She gave a short statement, saying, "I appreciate that the committee listened to everything. The work of the court continues, guided by the Constitution and the law." Pam Bondi, the woman who had made the allegations, faced a lot of backlash. She went on a friendly news program that night to defend herself. "I showed evidence that I believed came from a credible source," she said. "If some of the evidence is now being questioned, that doesn't mean there aren't real concerns about judicial independence." The host asked her, "Do you regret not checking the timeline before making such serious accusations against a Supreme Court justice?" Bondi hesitated before answering, "I did what I thought was right with the information I had. If I made a mistake, I'll accept responsibility, but I won't apologize for asking tough questions about our courts." The controversy didn't just affect Bondi and Barrett. Some senators who had supported Bondi's claims before they were proven wrong also started facing questions about their honesty. On the other hand, the people who had defended Barrett felt like they had been proven right. Legal experts pointed out that this situation showed how much people were losing trust in the Supreme Court. One law professor said, "When so many Americans think serious accusations might be true, even if they turn out to be false, it shows that there is a crisis of trust in the Supreme Court. That should concern us all." A week after the hearing, reporters found some problems in the whistleblower's background, which made people wonder if they had any real reason to make the claims. It turned out the person had never worked in the places they said they had, but they had learned enough inside information to make fake documents look real. The biggest change, however, came about 2 weeks later, when the Supreme Court announced new rules to be more open about its meetings during the confirmation process. The court didn't say anything directly about the Bondi situation, but the new rules made it clear that they wanted to be more transparent about their decisions and potential conflicts of interest. In a rare interview, a senior Supreme Court justice who wasn't involved in the controversy admitted that while the specific allegations turned out to be false, they showed that the court needed to be more open. He said, "Sometimes, even a crisis based on false information can lead to important changes." For the American public, the dramatic clash between Bondi and Barrett showed how hard it had become to tell what was true and what wasn't in politics. But the incident also reminded people how important it is to have clear evidence and carefully check facts, especially in an age when false accusations can spread quickly and cause a lot of outrage. 6 months later, when Justice Barrett wrote the majority opinion in a major case that went against what the fake documents had claimed she would do, many saw it as proof that she was still independent. But others wondered if all the public attention had affected her decision-making in ways no one could measure. The lesson was clear. In America's heated political environment, accusations can spread fast, but facts that are presented clearly and carefully can still win out in the end. If you liked this story, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.